I'm Kaylee, and today I'm going to be ranking all of the classics that I read in 2022. So I read quite a lot of classics in 2022. I read 13 classics that I term as classics that were written before 1914. And I read 27 modern classics that were written between 1915 and the 1970s. So I'm actually going to do two different sets of rankings. I'm going to rank the classics, and then I'm going to rank separately in a separate list the modern classics, because I feel like there's just no comparison. It's difficult to compare those. Before we dive in though, I'm going to reach back here to our Booktuber Shoutout book, and we're going to shout out somebody randomly. Today's shout out goes to Kala Nadi. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm not really sure. I will leave a link to their channel down in the description, so be sure to go over and subscribe to them. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to this channel and follow me over on Instagram and Twitter and all the places. And especially give this video a thumbs up if you love classics. All right, so we're going to start with the classics. And we're going to start right down at the bottom with number 13. The worst classic that I read in 2022 was Thomas Hardy's The Mayor of Casterbridge. I have been saying for a few years that I wanted to give Thomas Hardy another try, and I gave Thomas Hardy another try, and I didn't like it. So, I love Thomas Hardy's writing style. He has such a vivid, beautiful writing style, his characters and the setting and everything. I just hate his plots. I just hate everything about his plots. It's just so stinking depressing. And sometimes like kind of unbelievable. Like just, that would never happen. That just sounds insane. Now I know that the main plot of Mayor of Casterbridge is actually based on like supposedly a real story. Kind of the main premise is supposedly true. So it's one of those like stranger than fiction kind of things, I guess. But still, I'm sorry. I just did not enjoy Mayor of Casterbridge. I didn't really connect with any of the characters. Ugh. Number 12 is Lover's Vows, the play by Elizabeth Inchbald. So I picked this up because in Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, the characters in that story decide that they're going to put it on a play. And it's very like racy, and it's just so inappropriate. And Lover's Vows is that play. So I was like, ooh, I have to read this inappropriate play. Inappropriate for Jane Austen's time, you know. So it was fine. It wasn't very interesting. It was just very like overly dramatic, and the plot is extremely simple. And the only character that I liked or that I thought was really fun was the butler. The butler always talks in poetry. They ask him to talk in prose and he just won't. He has to make a poem out of everything. It's just really hilarious. But that was the only good part of the play, so meh. Number 11, unfortunately, is The Portable Kipling. I do love Kipling, but this collection of his short stories and poems just not his best work, and I feel like it's just very niche. And so a lot of the references and the settings and the lingo that he was using was just, it just went over my head, and I just didn't enjoy it. There were a few of the short stories in here that I liked, but most of it was just not my cup of tea. I'm sorry. Number 10 is Round the Fire Stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is a collection of horrifying tales of murder and mayhem and betrayal and suicide and monsters and ghosts. I did like that it wasn't too scary. It was definitely creepy, but it didn't creep me out so much that I ended up having nightmares or anything. It's very atmospheric, of course. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is just a genius writer. So I did enjoy these, but there were a couple of them that I was just like, ew, that's just gross. That wasn't scary. That was just yucko, nasty. So some of them was just like, blah. Number 9 is the manga classic A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is my second favorite Shakespearean play, and I really enjoyed reading it in this manga adaptation. I think you really get to see more of the humor of it when, you get to see the artwork and everything that's very humorous and fun. The designs for the fairies and everything was very imaginative and beautiful. So I really enjoyed that. Number 8 is Lady Susan by Jane Austen. I really enjoyed this because obviously Jane Austen's writing is just so hilarious and so genius. And I really liked the epistolary style of the writing. So it was very interesting to see that style from Jane Austen. However, I just don't like Lady Susan's character, which is the whole point. She's the villain. She's a terrible person. It was definitely interesting and fun to read, but I guess I'm comparing it to other Jane Austen works, and compared to her other works, I didn't like it as much, you know what I mean? So still really good, but it just kind of ends up in the middle-ish of this list. Number 7 is Hans Brinker or the Silver Skates. This is a reread. I think this is my 3rd or 4th time reading this. This is just such a sweet story, such a lovely story about these poor children, and they're trying to work and do the best that they can to help their family, but they really wish that they could have real skates. They have wooden skates, which don't really work very well. They're hoping that they can win the big race, and the prize is the silver skates. This is really cool because it goes into a lot of history and architecture and culture and food and everything about Holland and the Dutch people. This book is really fantastic for that, and it just gives you a really sweet story. Number 6 is the manga classic of Sense and Sensibility. I love Sense and Sensibility, and it was really interesting to see how it's adapted and kind of shortened and everything into a manga classic. Number 5 is another reread, The Children of the New Forest by Frederick Marryat. So I've read this twice now, I think, and I really enjoy it. This is about these children that their home is burned down and they have to go live in the forest with a kindly old forester. And they are noble-born children, but they have to learn to eke out their living in the forest, and they learn to keep chickens and churn butter. They learn to sew their own clothing. So all these little details of their life in the forest is just so interesting to me. And you also get the adventure because they're hiding out from the soldiers. So I just loved rereading this for the 2nd time. It was just so enjoyable. Number 4 is Olive by Dinah Maria Mulock-Craik. Katie over at Books and Things has been talking about Olive for years, and I finally read it this year and I loved it so much. Olive is born with a deformity in her back, so she has a little bit of a humpback. And it's all about how she rises above her circumstances and proves her worth to the people around her. It's just so emotional and beautiful, and it's all about these different relationships that she has with different people. I just loved it so much. It was so wonderful. Number 3 is Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. I reread it for, the 20th time. It's my favorite Shakespearean play, so I do end up rereading it every couple of years, and it's just so hilarious. It's just so funny. I love the witty repartee between Beatrice and Benedict, and it's just so much fun. Number 2 is Pride and Prejudice. I think this is probably my 6th or 7th time rereading Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I reread it again this year for Jane Austen July and enjoyed it so much. There's just every time I reread it, I see something different, or I see some depth in the characters that I never noticed before, or some historical perspective that I never considered before. That's the genius of Jane Austen. It's just every time you read it, it's something different kind of jumps out at you, some other aspect of the story or the characters' personalities or something. It's just always something new. And the number 1 book, my very favorite classic of the entire year, was the epic poem The Lady of the Lake by Sir Walter Scott. I've read quite a bit of Sir Walter Scott's prose, but I had never read any of his poetry before, and I kind of didn't know what to expect. And I should have known. I mean, man, it's Sir Walter Scott. Of course, it's genius and wonderful and vivid and just so powerful. So this is the story of a Scottish clan that they are hiding out in the mountains because they've fallen out of favor at court. And so the Lady of the Lake is the daughter of the chieftain of the clan, and they're hiding out on an island in a lake up in the Scottish Highlands, out in the wilderness. And of course, there's tons of adventures and battles and knights and ladies, and the poetry is just so rich, so beautiful. And yet it's very easy to follow. Like, it's not really complex or difficult to understand what's going on, but it's just so beautiful. I just loved it. I just fell in love with this poetry. Okay, so that is my ranking of all of the classics that I read in 2022. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know what was maybe the worst classic that you read, or what was your favorite classic that you read this past year. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.